Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Derling, and on this episode I'm going to go through my Whitesnake CD collection, which is pretty extensive, and there's some reissues along the way, and then some original ones. Not really anything that I've considered rare, but there are some things that I found hard to find at one time or another. So, look through my Whitesnake CD collection on this edition of Tim's Vinyl Confessions. The early years of Whitesnake are a little bit convoluted. For further information on that, I would highly recommend Martin Popoff's book called Sail Away, Whitesnake's Fantastic Journey. I did that on a special episode when that book first came out a few years ago. So if you type in Tim's Vinyl Confessions Whitesnake, well, you'll get this episode, but you'll get a couple others too. And I would say that book is about as informative a read as you're going to get on the early years of Whitesnake post David Coverdale leaving Deep Purple or Deep Purple disbanding. Him doing a couple of solo albums, and some of those musicians ended up in the initial incarnation of Whitesnake. So, the conventional wisdom is that the first Whitesnake album is this, Snakebite. Now, of the 8 songs on here, side 1 is an EP called David Coverdale's Whitesnake originally, and side 2 originally appeared on his second solo album, North Winds, but this is Snakebite, 1978. And the version I have here is a Geffen reissue from when they became big in 1987. Geffen reissued most of the Whitesnake CDs. This is a Canadian Columbia House edition that I have. Like a lot of the early Whitesnake albums, it's available in a variety of album covers. When I first had this, it was on cassette. It was a US cassette. It didn't have that photo of David Coverdale on it. It just had the snake. Here's the original CD, and that was the back cover. And because it was a later 80s issue, it actually has all the lyrics and credits to the album. All the songs on it. This actually, as far as Whitesnake, there's no hits off of this per se, at least on North American shores, but it does have the studio version of their rendition of Bobby Bland's Ain't No Love in the Heart of the City, which became a stage classic for them, and is one of those songs that if they don't play it in the UK, it's, you know, it's a riot type situation or whatever. It's like, it's a very disappointing if they don't do that one. Also in 1978, I guess you could call this the first proper Whitesnake album, although, like I said, it's a little confusing in the early days. This was definitely released as an album, and it is called Trouble. This CD is, again, a Geffen reissue, but it was a deleted one because there's a hole punched through it. For the entire case. If it had been a little bit closer, it would have hit the CD. So there you go. And the Geffen issues all had the Sunburst logo on it. And I should mention this too. Martin Birch was the producer for the first few Whitesnake albums, and on every album he has a nickname. And I guess, I'm not an Iron Maiden fan, but it's the same thing for Maiden, and he always has a different nickname. On this one he's called the Wasp for some reason. So there is the CD and the photo of the band from the back cover. And all the lyrics and credits. Next Whitesnake album, 1979. This one was controversial when it came out. It's got a pretty naughty album cover on it, Love Hunter. And the version of it that I have, I couldn't find a Geffen issue of it, although there was one. I just never found it. This is a UK version on EMI, which was Deep Purple's label, so subsequently was David Coverdale's label, or Whitesnake's label. That's what the CD looks like, and back cover of the booklet. A little like there's pictures and a little bit of credits inside here, which I was half expecting to when I first got to open it up and find nothing. Generally considered the finest of the Whitesnake albums, at least in the early period, and a lot of diehards would tell you it still is the case, is 1980, Ready and Willing. Now, this album was the only album of the early Whitesnake catalog that Geffen did not reissue. If there's anyone out there that can dispute that, please show me the proof. Because I don't think there exists a Geffen issue of Ready and Willing. I'd almost bet money on it. So, it was hard to find a cassette. I ended up getting it on CD. This is an import as well. on EMI. This is a really good album. Fool for Your Loving came off of this one. I like the Steve Vai version on Slip of the Tongue, but this was the one I heard first. I saw the video for it on Much Music, and I just loved the song, and I think I prefer the original version. In fact, I'm positive I prefer the original version. Lyrics, everything's in silver on here, very cool. And by this time, Whitesnake was essentially half Deep Purple, because you have Coverdale, of course, John Lord on keyboards, and Ian Pace on drums. And this is the lineup that recorded one of the most overlooked live albums of all time, Live in the Heart of the City. This also came out in 1980. I originally had a Geffen issue of this. This is a UK version of 2007 reissue, which features all the songs, not just the 7 songs that appeared in the original album and cassette in North America, and subsequently the Geffen CD. So it's a combination of Live in the Heart of the City from June of 1980 and Live at Hammersmith in November of 1978. And on my episode where I talk about the Martin Popoff book and several other Whitesnake related things, I talk about the fact that this, for the first time, brought some Deep Purple songs into the Whitesnake canon by doing them live on this Whitesnake album. So you've got Mistreated and Might Just Take Your Life, which are now, because of this, considered to be Whitesnake songs. I like this drawing. I think it's a pretty cool drawing of the band as it was on stage. It's a pretty extensive reissue. There's some single covers shown here, and just a good live album. It's the early Whitesnake albums, production-wise, nothing against Martin Birch, certainly, but they're a little dated sounding, and they're kind of I don't know. They don't really capture how good the songs actually are. It's a cliche to say, but a lot of early live albums did sort of do what the original versions did not. And by the way, I thought about this. Just thought I got to slip back to Ready and Willing. Martin Birch's nickname on Ready and Willing was Basher. Now, does he have a nickname on this? I'm sure he does, because I'm sure he produced it. Let's see now. It doesn't have a nickname listed for him. How about that? Might have been Q&A. That might have been what was on the original album. So the next one is 1981. Come and Get It. This is another Geffen reissue. This one is a Canadian version that's from the later 90s, because Geffen was distributed by MCA at this point. So it's just a straight reprint of what was on the back cover. Interestingly enough, it reprints a Mirage logo, which was a division of Atlantic, which Whitesnake were on in North America from 1980 through 1981. Martin Birch was called Sir Larry on the credits of this one. This is a really big album in the UK. I think it got as high as number 2. Still hadn't broke through in North America. Next one to come out is a pretty significant album in Whitesnake's career. This is Saints and Sinners. It came out in 1982. This is a Geffen reissue, Columbia House. This album contains the original versions of Here I Go Again, and to a lesser extent, as far as impact goes, Crying in the Rain. Both of those albums would be re-recorded for the 1987 album. A lot of turmoil within the band members at the time, which is, I'm sure, hardly a surprise. So that the only band member listed is David Coverdale, or Pitcher, and listed for that matter. Produced by St. Martin Doc Birch. That was his nickname on here. The breakthrough Whitesnake album in most of the world came out in 1984. This is Slide It In. This is a Canadian version on Geffen Records, not a reissue, it was an original issue. And it was produced by Martin Birch, but also Keith Olsen had a hand in it, because there are 2 very different mixes of it, which I'll expound upon that more in a second. That's what the CD looked like. It's got all the... Very little credits were in it, but the lyrics and the credits are all in here. And in 2009, there was a 25th anniversary edition of Slide It In that came out, which I picked up. This has the US mix, which is the one I just showed you, and most of the UK mixes. Also the B-side, Need Your Love So Bad, first time on a CD here, as far as I know, and all the promo videos that were done from this album. And I go into this in a lot of detail in my previous episode where I talk about the Martin Popoff book and also the Purple album. So 1987, I mean, the reason most people my age and most people in North America even know who Whitesnake is because of this album. Self-titled, in my neck of the woods. In the UK it was titled 1987. They wanted to represent, Geffen really wanted to represent them as a new band, and it worked. This album sold something like 8-9 million copies. Here I Go Again was the #1 single. Is This Love Almost? I think it got as high as #2. And of course, famously, the lineup that appears on here: David Coverdale, John Sykes, Neil Murray, Ainsley Dunbar. Except for Coverdale, they were all, sacked, as the English would say. And you got the video lineup. So I originally had this on cassette. This was where I started my Whitesnake collection, which I don't think that's probably very different for a lot of people my age. This has the lyrics and credits in it. 1989, Slip of the Tongue came out. Was successful, but not as successful as the previous, so it's one of those funny things where it's considered a failure, even though it's not. Again, by this time, as the last album, using the classic Hugh Syme artwork. This is the one album that Steve Vai appears on, one studio album. So this is the first Whitesnake album I bought as a new release. I bought it on cassette. And it's got the lyrics and credits inside of it. Nothing really different. Next release to come out by Whitesnake that came across my radar came out in late 1994, I guess mid-1994. Whitesnake's Greatest Hits. This is a Geffen release, Canadian Columbia House. This was the first time that the radio mix of Here I Go Again was readily available, which, not the one that's in the video, this is a one that I really don't like. This also contained Looking for Love and You're Gonna Break My Heart Again, which were recorded for the 1987 album and appeared on some worldwide releases of it. It sounded exactly like that album, fit right in. I don't know why they didn't just make it an 11-song album. And a song called Sweet Lady Luck that was recorded for Slip of the Tongue, again, sounds exactly like Slip of the Tongue. Could have easily appeared on it. So this is all stuff from Slide It In, the self-titled album, and Slip of the Tongue. It doesn't go terribly deep. There is a decent write-up on the band here. And that was kind of it for quite a while. And an album that still hasn't been released in North America, I don't think. 2007, Restless Heart comes out. Now this has different, like a lot of the other ones, they have different cover art. Some have just a picture of David Coverdale. It's listed as David Coverdale's Whitesnake. This is a Japanese version. Classic Hugh Syme artwork on here. And this actually has, the last 3 songs in here were bonus songs for the Japanese version. And like most Japanese versions go, this came with an extra booklet, which I'll show you. Well, I'll show you the original booklet first. This font that's used, everybody was using this font. I'd just say everybody, but a lot of people were using this font. Queensryche used it. Rush certainly used it. Dream Theater used it. It must have been a Hugh Syme thing. Maybe he went as far as that goes. I do find they start to look the same after a while. Same style of printing. So, like most of these Japanese releases, it's mostly a write-up in Japanese. Lyrics in, well, the English lyrics were inside the booklet, but the lyrics to the bonus songs were in here in English too. After that, David Coverdale and Adrian Vandenberg recorded this acoustic live album, Starkers in Tokyo. I talk about this on the other episode. This came out on EMI in late 1997. Did I say that Restless Heart came out in 2007? If I did, I'm wrong. Sometimes I get ahead of myself. Just remember the years, the ending years. Now this looks like I could have made it, the disc itself, very cheap looking, but this is a very stripped down live album. And nowadays, not the easiest one to get a copy of. Now this has the Japanese lyrics and the English lyrics side by side. Recorded in the heat of the night, not the still, on the 5th of July 1997, recorded the next day at Toshiba EMI in Tokyo. So this is a one take, and the tracks span the Whitesnake career. As a matter of fact, they go back on the last song, Soldier of Fortune, they go back all the way to David Coverdale's Deep Purple days. I mean, there are a lot of Whitesnake compilations, even more by now. You know, the record companies just churn them out. I picked this one up from Columbia House. I thought it was worth getting. The definitive collection just seemed like a good mix of songs. They finally delved into the pre-slided in period. So Don't Break My Heart Again is on here. Walking in the Shadow of the Blues, Ready and Willing. So that kind of said, okay, this is kind of worth picking up. Interestingly enough, Pride and Joy from Coverdale Page also appears on here. Very famous publicity photo of the group, of a lineup, which, by the way, never recorded an album. Think about that. As often as you've seen these five guys as Whitesnake, they never recorded an album. So there's versions of the various Whitesnake lineups through here, and a write-up, of course. There's even one picture of Coverdale with Jimmy Page. Also, in 2006, Whitesnake had reunited and started touring again. I talk about this CD on a previous episode, Live in the Shadow of the Blues. This is almost the same songs that came out on the Live in the Heart of the City, not Live in the Heart, Live in the Still of the Night DVD, with 4 new studio tracks. The first new Whitesnake album in 11 years at the time came out in 2008. Good to Be Bad. This is a deluxe edition. This was the first one that was readily available. I actually found this at Walmart. It's 2 CD set. The brand new album is disc 1. Disc 2 is live versions from the previous CD that I showed you. So this was on SPV, which was a UK label that for a while had a North American wing. It didn't last very long. I think the only other thing I've got on this label is Alice Cooper's Along Came a Spider, which came out the same year. This has all the lyrics and credits. One interesting thing about this is that every time the word light comes out in the liner notes, it is complete in complete caps. That would be a Coverdale touch. The next Whitesnake album to come out with relatively the same lineup came out in 2011. It's Forevermore, and this is my version. I've got a deluxe version of the DVD. This came out on Frontiers Records. Photo of the band as it is, or it was in 2011 anyway. Booklet that comes with it. I like the gold finish here. It's all the lyrics and credits. And also in 2011, a secondary release came out, but it was archival. Live at Donington 1990. I talked about this at length in previous episode 2. This is their appearance at Donington 1990 on August 18th. This contains the DVD as well. Lots of cool packaging. And I like the design on the discs themselves. Talked about the deluxe edition of Slide It In, but in 2014, 30th anniversary version came out, Back to the Bone here. Talked about this too. This is on Frontiers Records. I've got a lot of CDs on Frontiers Records. This has a DVD with it as well. A good chronicle of this period. If you like this period in the band's history, this is a good snapshot into it. Between that and the remastered Slide It In album, gives you a whole picture of what was going on with them. And then the newest thing I've got to show you, there's a lot of live albums, a lot of compilations that I just don't have. But an album that came out in 2015 that I still really enjoy is the Purple album. This is where Coverdale took on re-recording some of the Deep Purple songs that he was involved in. And again, that's one of the main focuses of an episode almost devoted to it, talking about it. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, just show you what the CD looks like. And once again, this is on Frontiers Records. There's the booklet that comes with it. So thanks for being with me for this look through my Whitesnake CD collection on Tim's Vinyl Confessions.